It is July 13th, day 124 of the pandemic, and I didn't make 3 days in a row of reading Carson, but whatever, it's a pandemic, it's allowed. I'm going to pick back up. We finished with letters, and folded meanings last time, so I'm going to pick back up. I'm going to probably read the last paragraph of folded meanings because it's Carson and she likes that with her arguments. And I'll read I'll read 2 or 3 chapters. I'm not sure which. We'll just see how long it takes. Yeah. Picking Carson back up now because I need to think about Carson right now. In the middle of trying to figure out what's going to happen at school in the fall, if we're going to have school in person in the fall, how to manage when our governor contradicts our mayor and her desire to keep everyone safe in a world of division and every person for themselves rather than a willingness to be patient and let our care for the collective guide us when masks become a political symbol. Yeah, I need the retreat into some thinking about things that are not that, though it's impossible to get away from Carson's ontology because, I don't know, maybe more than anything else I've ever read, I believe it. It compels. It stands and sticks. So anyway, 10 pages or 16 pages, I'm not sure how much, but I'm going to start picking up on page 100 at the end of folded meanings and into Bellerophone is quite wrong after all. Folded texts and private meanings were a literal fact for ancient readers. But there is a metaphorical reality here too. It is a metaphor as old as Homer, whose telling of the Bellerophone myth in Iliad 6 is the oldest story we have in Greek about letters, reading, and writing. Bellerophone is quite wrong after all. Although embedded in an epic genealogy, Bellerophone's is a story of erotic triangles, ideal matter for a novel. We do not know where Homer got the story. Presumably, it reflects an extremely ancient Lydian layer in the epic tradition from which he drew, dating from a time long before his own, supposing we place Homer in the 8th century BC. It was a time when some form of reading and writing was known to the Aegean world, or at least to the people of Lycia, where the story is set. No one knows what system of writing this was. Homer himself may not have known. The poet is widely believed by scholars to have been illiterate. In any event, he betrays not the slightest fascination as he tells his Bellerophone story with the phenomenon of writing and reading that figures crucially within it. The motif of letters falls so flat here, it makes you wonder. Bellerophone was a young man gifted by the gods with remarkable beauty. Exiled from his home for murder, he takes refuge with King Proetos of Ephyra and all unwittingly stirs love in the heart of Antea, Proetos' wife. The lover is maddened by desire, the beloved unresponsive. A typical erotic scenario, which draws a typical erotic reaction from Antea. She triangulates. By means of a lying tale, she inflames her husband to jealousy of Bellerophone, so that he resolves to destroy the young man, but not in direct encounter. Proetos arranges a kind of deadfall, in which the 3 angles of Eros will close on Bellerophone when actuated by a deadly text. Bellerophone is dispatched to Lycia, to the halls of Antea's father, carrying his own death warrant. Just like Hamlet. Just like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. What? I forgot about this part. Here's a chunk of the text from the Iliad. And Proitos sent him to Lycia and bestowed on him a written text that would kill him. For he wrote many life-destroying things on a folded tablet and bid him show it to Antaeus' father so that he might be destroyed. What are the life-destroying things on the folded tablet? The life to be destroyed is Bellerophone's, and the destroyer, Antaeus' father. Most likely, then, Proitos relates to the father that his chaste daughter has been shamed by the rapist rogue Bellerophone. The erotic triangle that began in Antaeus' imagination and now acquires the status of written fact. The fact is a lie, but so is any novel. This should not detain us. Upon the fact is projected a metaphor that almost kills Bellerophone. The metaphor brings together the action of wooing a lover and the action of reading a written text on the screen of Bellerophone's life. For he is twice unwitting victim of the signs he carries. First, his own beauty, gift of the gods, seduces Antaea, unknown to him. Then, the folded tablet, bestowed by Proitos, writes the order for his death, and he does not read it. Life-destroying things are the text he carries, but the word, thumophthora, is an ambiguous one. On the surface, life-destroying things refers to the projected murder of Bellerophone, but the adjective can also convey the emotional sense heartbreaking and evoke the seductive beauty that drove Antaea mad. Unwitting wooing began Bellerophone's story. Unread writing will end it. These possibilities float just where Bellerophone cannot see them. Bellerophone is a living metaphor for the blind point of Eros, carrying on his face beauty, and in his hands, tablet, a meaning he does not decode. The text remains for him a folded one, literally and metaphorically. Unfolded, its two sides compose one meaning, a meaning vitally incongruent with the actual fact of Bellerophone, alive. It is a meaning that is a verb, and that will act to assign a new predicate to Bellerophone, dead. It is a meaning whose novel sense will not entirely obscure the previous sense, nor the difference between them, for death keeps life visible while making it absent. The meaning is a blind point where Bellerophone's knowledge of his own situation disappears into itself. If Bellerophone were to unfold the tablet and intercept the message he is carrying, he would exclaim with Aristotle, I was quite wrong after all. That would be a moment of wrenching pain. Also, it might save his life. We have to keep going back to such moments if we wish to maintain contact with the possible. Not anyone else, Bellerophone carried the letter himself, in a, so to speak, tragic manner, caught by his own wings, says Eustathius in his ancient commentary on the Iliadic text. Eustathius is overinterpreting. As Homer tells the story, there is nothing tragic about it, for Bellerophone is not caught in Lycia at all. After arriving at the court of Antaeus' father, he hands over the damning letter to the king, then proceeds to discredit its contents by a few heroic exploits and win the king's other daughter to wife as his reward. The folded tablet is not mentioned again. One can see easily how Bellerophone's tale, told from the point of view of Antaea, for instance, could have furnished a tragedy. See Euripides' Hippolytus. Equally, there is fair material for weaving a romance around Bellerophone and his Lycian bride. The Iliad does not tell these stories. Homer's hero is a warrior and a winner. Love is incidental to him. Moreover, attempts to interpret him symbolically proved frustrating. Bellerophone wins out in the end by heroic virtue, not by unfolding his own metaphor. Homer is not primarily interested in the puzzles of inference and reference that amuse novelists and later poets. He has a war to wage. Nor is Homer interested in the writing on the folded tablet. Like Bellerophone, he transmits and ignores it. Why does Bellerophone not read the tablet? Has he no curiosity? Is he illiterate? Does he scruple to break the seal? These same questions might be put to Homer. What is his relation, as a poet speaking from within an ancient oral tradition, to this Lycaean vignette about alphabets and love triangles? Can he read the signs he's using? I do not know how one could answer these questions. A powerful metaphorical potential seems to be fossilized within this traditional story of Bellerophone and his killing text, but, except in overinterpretation, it cannot be drawn out. Nonetheless, the story offers some matter for speculation about literacy and its effects on writers and readers. Bellerophone's myth derives, as we have said, from a time when Lycaean society knew some form of writing. The myth brings together a number of the notions we have been exploring in ancient novels. For example, it is a love text where Eros acts from a folded text. For example, it is a love story where Eros acts from a folded text. Its erotic situation includes two terms until the lover deliberately complicates these by adding a third angle. A written text is the mechanism of the complication. Along the angle where the written text enters the story move the elements of metaphor, inference, paradox, and imaginative action. These elements inscribe a blind point at the center of the story and at the center of its hero, Bellerophone. Into the blind point, we watch several important questions about Bellerophone and about Homer disappear. Can anything be learned from the repeated confluence in different genres of these elements with the phenomenon of literacy? It would seem to make sense that when an author begins to use and to think about reading and writing, his imagination is trained along certain lines. His mental landscape is lit from a certain angle. The novel as a genre evolved in adaptation to that angle. Deep within the Bellerophone story, some pre-Homeric imagination has traced the same angle. It provides us with a special intractable pleasure as we read. Homer does not, in the self-conscious manner of novelists, exploit that pleasure, yet our reading of his version brings us somewhat closer to the question that lies at the heart of the matter. It is a question about the relations between readers and their reading. We have already recalled the famous words of Francesca in Dante's Inferno. Other similar scenarios come to mind, for example, that of Pushkin's heroine in Eugene Onegin. Tatiana is besotted by romantic fiction. With what attention she now reads a delicious novel, with what vivid enchantment drinks the seductive fiction, sighs, and having made her own another's ecstasy, another's melancholy, she whispers in a trance, by heart, a letter to the amiable hero. Readers in real life, as well as within fiction, bear witness to the allure of the written text. The novelist Eudora Welty says of her mother, she reads Dickens in the spirit in which she would have eloped with him. Dickens himself would not have been discomfited by such a spirit in a reader, if we may judge from a letter he wrote to Maria Bednall in 1855. Here he speaks of his novel David Copperfield, to the woman who inspired Dora. Perhaps you have once or twice laid down that book and thought how dearly that boy must have loved me, and how vividly this man remembers it. Through Francesca, through Tatiana, through Maria Bednall, through Eudora Welty's mother, some current of Eros leapt from a written page. You have felt it yourself, reading Montaigne, or Heliodorus, or Sappho. Can we arrive at a more realistic appraisal of this phenomenon? Just what is erotic about reading and writing? Realist. No one contradicts me now, and the salt has gone out of my life. Queen Victoria after Albert's death. Eros loves strife and delights in paradoxical outcomes. Caraton, Carius, and Caliroe, 1.1. It is nothing new to say that all utterance is erotic in some sense, that all language shows the structure of desire at some level. Already in Homer's usage, the same verb has the meaning to give heed, to make mention, and also the meaning to court, woo, or be a suitor. Already in ancient Greek myth, the same goddess has charge of rhetorical persuasion and the arts of seduction. Already in earliest metaphor, it is wings or breath that move words from speaker to listener, as they move Eros from lover to beloved. But words that are written or read place in sharp, sudden focus the edges of the units of language, and the edges of those units called reader and writer. Back and forth across the edges moves the symbolic intercourse. As the vowels and consonants of an alphabet interact symbolically to make a certain written word, so writer and reader bring together two halves of one meaning. So lover and beloved are matched together like two sides of one knuckle bone. An intimate collusion occurs. The meaning composed is private and true and makes permanent, perfect sense. Ideally speaking, at least, that is the case. In fact, neither reader nor writer nor lover achieves such consummation. The words we read and the words we write never say exactly what we mean. The people we love are never just as we desire them. The two symbola never perfectly match. Eros is in between. Both the experience of desire and the experience of reading have something to teach us about edges. We have endeavored to see what that is by consulting ancient literature, lyric and romantic, for its exposition of Eros. We have watched how archaic poets shape love poems as triangles and how ancient novelists construct novels as a sustained experience of paradox. We caught sight of a similar outline, even in Homer, where the phenomenon of reading and writing surfaces in Bellerophone's story. We speculated about writers' purposes to seduce readers, and we are finally led to suspect that what the reader wants from reading and what the lover wants from love are experiences of very similar design. It is a necessarily triangular design, and it embodies a reach for the unknown. Desire for knowledge is the mark of the beast. Aristotle says all men reach out to know. As you perceive the edge of yourself at the moment of desire, as you perceive the edges of words from moment to moment in reading or writing, you are stirred to reach beyond perceptible edges, toward something else, something not yet grasped. The unplucked apple, the beloved just out of reach, touch, the meaning not quite attained, are desirable objects of knowledge. It is the enterprise of Eros to keep them so. The unknown must remain unknown or the novel ends. As all paradoxes are in some way paradoxes about paradox, so all Eros is, to some degree, desire for desire. Hence ruses. What is erotic about reading or writing is the play of imagination called forth in the space between you and your object of knowledge, between you and the thing that you want to know. Poets and novelists, like lovers, touch that space to life with their metaphors and subterfuges. The edges of the space are the edges of the things you love, whose inconsonities make your mind move. And there is Eros, nervous realist in this sentimental domain, who acts out of a love of paradox. That is, as he folds the beloved object out of sight into a mystery, into a blind point where it can float known and unknown, actual and possible, near and far, desired and drawing you on. I think that's enough for today.